Okay.
So, would you first just like to introduce yourself?
My name is Lou Stamp. I was born in Alliance, Ohio.
My name is Jürgen Pape. I was born in Germany.
Hi, I'm Christy Vargo.
I'm Jane Heller.
I'm Karen Greenwald.
I'm Russ Harris.
Larry Murdoch.
Well, when I was a little kid, my grandmother was a knitter and made clothes, and my mother made clothes, and she was a knitter, and so I still have a little Valentine's guy about this big that I made when I was about that age. So I started taking classes before I retired. I took a week of vacation for a number of years and would take classes at John Campbell Folk School, learn how to do various things in Airmont, in Gatlinburg. And just, I have said no to a lot of opportunities to do other things because I want to do art. And I love the texture of fiber. I had this 30-year something hiatus between when I was making things and when I retired. And when I retired, I said I want to retire early enough while I have my hands and my eyes because I want to make things.
Fortunately, I had an instructor in high school of a class that I was not in, but I sort of cut study hall to go to his class. And he taught me that there are things to do with pictures after you're done taking the picture. And taking the picture is one thing, but what you do in the darkroom was another. And then I got into photojournalism when I was in college at Ohio University. And there was a lot going on in the country with civil rights and women's rights and Vietnam War. So there was a lot of journalism that students were doing, and I was doing that. It was an interesting time. It was a very exciting time to be a photojournalist. And I traveled around the country a little bit as a student in Chicago and for the civil unrest that was there in Washington, D.C. When I graduated, I had a job at a small newspaper in the Dayton area, a suburban newspaper, and it was a great place to work. We were a young staff and all raring to go, and so we did a lot of really good stories, and the paper was one that gave pictures a lot of play, and I had a lot of freedom to do the kind of pictures I wanted to do there. But I like to say that when I got to the Beacon Journal, they had one Pulitzer, and when I left, they had 4, and I had my name on one of them. No longer being a journalist, I was kind of beside myself as to what I was going to do. I knew I was still a photographer. I always kind of knew I was always going to be a photographer. That was going to be Lou Stamp, photographer, was always what I was going to be.
Susie and I were high school sweethearts. Freshman year in high school, I was interested in baseball, wrestling, things like that. I didn't think I had any interest in the arts. I was asked in a freshman composition course to write a theme. The teacher explained the next theme we're all going to write is going to be a personal interview, and you're going to interview one of your classmates. And I thought that sounded like that's a pretty good assignment. I think I like that assignment. And so as I'm sitting there and she's starting to match people up, I realized there were 11 boys in this class. And she's matching boy to boy. Boy to boy. I said, my God, some boy's going to get a girl. It was me. And it was Susie. Susie already played as a freshman in high school. She played 6 instruments. She was very talented as a seamstress, as a sewer. She hadn't gotten into quilting at that time, but she became a quilter later on. And I think in part because she was so invested in the arts, I thought to win her favor, I needed to show like I was invested in the arts too. I really wasn't at that point, but I think it was part of her goal in life to teach me about the arts, particularly about music, which was her. She was a wonderful pianist. My aspirations at that time would be, I wanted to be the next second baseman for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And I found out that if you're a weak hitter, you're slow of foot, they weren't interested in you. And so I realized my aspirations were rather foolish. And here's this young girl who has already accomplished all these things. And so over the many years of our courtship and then later through our marriage of 47 years, she was always educating me on music. And in time, because of her interest in fiber arts, I would eventually become interested in weaving.
Animal.
This one?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you made that one.
the dragon doll. Things in the house are other artists, people we have known, we've traded pieces.
Very cool.
And
It's kind of fun living the life of an artist.
yeah, red coming, a string coming out of his pocket. That was in my grandmother's house. And Russ, where is yours?
Oh, my mother had this little baker guy up there, the second one on top. Mother had that one.
With the red, with the
Yeah.
white hat.
Yeah, art and music both growing up were very important. That just kind of really sparked my interest in art. And I played clarinet a lot, played in the Chicago Youth Symphony, and so art and music were really important. Then I went away to college and didn't do much with either one. Went to seminary, had a church, had real good churches in Ohio even, and decided didn't want to do that. And it was ordination time and to get ordained, and it should be a really, I think, holy moment. You know, bishops and people are laying their hands on your head and saying important words, and you're on your knees in the robe and all, you know, many thousands of people in the room, and you're thinking, well, I'm on my knees, hands are over my head, and I'm thinking of Rocket J. Squirrel from Rocky and Bullwinkle when Bullwinkle says, "Hocus pocus dominocus, the spirits are about to speak. Are they friendly spirits?" I'm hearing that in my head. That should have been a clue.
And my father had a little old photograph many years ago, maybe 50 years ago. He said it would be nice to have that in color. And so, of course, that doesn't work. So I photographed it, put it on, outlined it on canvas, and then filled it in. I went to the States with my parents when I was 17. And good thing I had 5 years of English language before I came, because within 2 weeks I was in 12th grade and I'd never seen a multiple choice test before in my life. So I flunked it, but they thought I should be given a try anyway. So I'm a landscape architect, but really more a planner. I worked for American Electric Power for 26 years and basically did industrial planning, anything from $4 billion power plant site design. Everything was done in-house. So I traveled throughout 7 states, from Michigan down to Tennessee. I have a whole series of over 100 pictures of reflection photos, which I stumbled across by sheer dumb luck when I used to go out to sites anywhere in the Midwest, and headquarters was still in Manhattan. I needed to document site pictures so I could take them back and look at it and work with it. So it was not really for artistic purposes until I discovered the reflection photos, and then I used it for that also.
My career started out as an environmental educator, so I do nature photography for the most part, landscapes and birds and animals. At the end of my career, I was working for the National Audubon Society, so that's birds and conservation.
I started selling antique American art pottery, mainly made here in Ohio, and that was so wonderful. Yeah, I could buy it, I could collect it, I could sell it, and there's thousands of people who collect it, and you do pretty well. And Karen suggested to me, you know, you ought to just take an adult education class in pottery and see how that stuff is made, and all you'd be better be able to talk to your, you know, all of the people that you sell it to. So sure, took the class, came home the first day in class. I mean, perfect. I'm covered in clay in my hair and everywhere else. It felt comfortable. I told Karen, I said, I'm going to be a potter. And
He said, I fell in love with
I
mud,
did.
I have to be a potter.
yeah, and I did, and I went back to school. I went to Appalachian Center for Crafts, which is part of Tennessee Tech, and went back to school. Loved it. As soon as after I finished the program, I opened a studio, and I had a feel for it, and I could do it and make things, and it just became the passion of what I wanted to do, and it just led to a really fantastic life in the studio and with people and with art, and when it's your passion, you're just like, okay, what else are you going to do? I'd say to Karen, I'm going to work, and she'd snicker because she knew I was just going to the studio.
To play in
I mean,
mud.
I started to paint when I was 40 because I was a little tired of being a housewife and I was a little tired of being a mother, although that's how I was identified. And I love my children, but you need something for yourself, particularly as you age. So that's where I ended up.
Well, I thought that I wanted to be a business teacher, a high school business teacher, until I did my student teaching. And a big overgrown football player picked up his typewriter when I was in the class by myself with the other students, and he held up his typewriter and said, teacher, my typewriter broke," and holding it in two pieces. And I said to myself, I'm not going to do that. So I was in my last semester of college, and I don't know I had no idea what I was going to do. So I'm walking down a sidewalk in a hot spring sky in Abilene, Texas, and the chaplain at the college came up to me and he said, I understand you don't want to be a teacher. And I said, no, I don't. He said, what are you going to do? And I said, I have no idea. He said, you should go to seminary. And I said, girls can't do that. And he says, yes, women can. And I said, no, girls can't do that. He said, oh, yes, women can. Anyway, I enrolled in seminary, Perkins School of Theology at Southern Methodist University, and had my master's in theology. And I decided that along the way that I would be ordained. And so I was ordained in the region of Texas around Fort Worth, and was the first woman ordained in that area. And that's how I got to what I did. And because I was traveling so much, I didn't have time to do anything related to art, much less to sewing or long-term projects like that. I just had no chance. I didn't have a chance to do it. So when I retired, I turned down a whole bunch of job offers, and here I am.
Doing art.
Doing art.
Just add to it over time, and you make it bigger, and then you needle felt that in.
It probably depends very much what kind of job you had. I mean, I always felt that I wouldn't want a job that I would hate. I really enjoyed what I did, even when I did it. I'm happy to be retired, but I'm happy to have done that.
And you can see it's still
This is the wet
malleable.
process. I see.
I call it a wet process because you print it so that the ink doesn't dry.
I see.
This picture is actually drying now, but it's left dust or particles, particulate matter left behind. And so you can still do things to it, even
Yeah.
after it's like this. But these are that one's about 2 or 3 years old there. This one's about 4 years old now. And that's what it looks like. That's the original photograph. And that's what the
wow.
wet print looks like. But now the finished print is out in the other room. Journalism always had its constraints as ethical things. Now I didn't have to deal with those constraints, and I didn't mind them, but they were very stringent as to what you could do to a picture. And I occasionally had played around with taking pictures and doing something to them that wouldn't have met journalism's high standards of ethics. So I started playing with pictures and doing other things to them. And what I have here in my cottage is pictures that I've done a lot of manipulation beyond making the original pictures. And now I still take what you might call conventional pictures. Is there's a picture, I see it, I take a picture of it, and I like it. now I'm doing things to those pictures afterward, and sometimes it's through combining pictures, and sometimes it's taking the picture and printing it and leaving it wet so that I can manipulate it with brushes, fingers, spatulas, all kinds of things. Things much like what a painter might do, except they're starting with a sketch they've done with a pencil or a piece of chalk, and I'm starting with a sketch that I've done with my camera.
When I was working, it was hard to fit it in. What I have tried to do probably since the early 90s was to immerse myself in week-long experiences guided by a photographer. So those are both a chance to get to places that the photographer knows will be a good place, and timing, weather-wise, time of day, that kind of thing. So you have that expertise, but also their teaching in the field. And so that has always been, since the early 90s, something that I really, really enjoyed. And I just felt like, boy, the second I hit the scene, I was on vacation and thinking about nothing else. I would just zone in on photography. So that I have carried into retirement.
I was always intrigued when I would see a weaver, the process, the mechanisms that were involved, and the things that could be created, and they were quite different. And as you look around here, you'll see lots of different styles.
I've been taking pictures forever. I can't even remember when I started. I think I was probably in high school. So it's been an evolution. For a while I tried to do some oil painting. I've got a couple of really bad ones up here. And it was really clear that was not my thing.
Those two deer?
Uh-huh.
You call those really bad?
What I enjoy about painting is working with color. I'm not going to tell you how long I've studied color. It's been a long time since I started to paint. I'm still studying color, and I still don't get it. It's so complex, and you have to use it to get it. With the red, I'd put a green next to it and see what happened, or I'd put a purple next to it and just see how it would respond. And it was just fun to watch. To be able to visually see what happens.
Here's an example of a photo edit that I've just done of hummingbirds in Costa Rica. And so my next step would be to matte and frame those. And when I do matting and framing, what I like to do is not just plain old matting, but to really choose colors that call out the colors in the main subject.
Sometimes it's a release. When Susie died, I did a piece for the center where she had all of her infusions to represent the struggle and that for people who have combated cancer. And there's such bravery, there's such neat things that people do who have had to fight that battle. All the times we were in the infusion center and the other places where we would see people battling cancer, and there were many, many positive things that came out of that, and this great strength that people had. But after watching people, I have no doubt the stronger sex is women. I enjoyed doing the one little tribute for that cancer center. You hear lots of stories in that, and they are remarkable, and many of them find ways to express that artistically too. They write poetry, they do paintings, they do weavings or sewings and that, and all the things there are really awe-inspiring in many, many ways. It's rather quite remarkable that the human spirit can dig down so deep that they're able to maintain a quality of life that belies what you think a person should be able to do. It's really quite special.
We've been here 4.5 years. We decided we had to move to a place away from where we were in Western North Carolina. We moved there when we retired, and thought we would retire and live there forever. Until I fell off the back of a treadmill and broke 4 bones in my foot, and chipped a bone in my ankle. And our house had the narrow doors. You couldn't get a walker through the doors, and it had stairs everywhere.
I had some guidance from my sister who was in a village in New York, that was one of the criteria that she wanted, where people were still thinking about things and not just warehousing. And so that was one reason I came here, and there are an awful lot of people here that we have some really good conversations about the cosmos and about theology and about religion, and we talk about all kinds of different things, and you never know what you're going to talk about at dinner. It's what keeps you going, I think.
I had lost Susie in December of 2016. I was thinking after Susie passed, what did I want to do? Did I want to relocate? My support group was here. The things I like to do in art, music, and theater were already established here, so I wanted to remain.
There's something about this place that does attract people who like and who appreciate art. I don't think it's part of the conversation, but I do think people notice it when they get tours of the buildings or tours of people's homes, or just having casual conversations about what people like to do or don't like to do.
When we started Kendall, we insisted Dee Richards was a weaver, and she insisted on a fiber arts room, and I insisted on a paint room, a studio space.
Now we are sitting in the art room. There's just a handful of folks who are in here mostly because we have so much stuff that has to live here that it's kind of a small group who can be here.
And I wish I had been a little noisier and I could have gotten a bigger room. But I'm grateful for what we have. It works. And the people who come up here are just wonderful.
We're blessed here that it's a very well-educated community. You don't have to be well-educated to have appreciation for the arts, but it certainly oftentimes goes hand in hand. We do have a number of very fine artists here.
It's nice to see what people have done.
We have painters, Mrs. Olderman, Jane Heller, E.J. Fitzpatrick.
Right now, E.J. Fitzpatrick is exhibiting her paintings in the gallery, and they're gorgeous. And one of our partners, Matthew, has some of his work down there too.
Most people have no idea that he's a budding artist. He takes a painting lesson with an artist every Saturday. We put the two of them together in the most recent show.
It's wonderful.
Max Rubinowitz is a world-class violinist, and he has been instrumental in establishing the classical music series that blesses this community. And he was also the conductor of the Naples Symphony for over 10 years. Many of the artists that he brings here come out of love and appreciation for him because they credit him in establishing them in the professional music world.
You can go to Larry's house, and he's got a loom set up in a room. I mean, and he weaves.
Jane Walker is a wonderful pianist, as is Amanda Parker.
I mean,
Karen Treese has a harp
in her apartment, and she plays her harp.
Karen Treese is a harpist.
I mean,
yeah.
that's pretty amazing. Or that you have a former symphony conductor.
Kathy Houchins, but Kathy's also a cellist. Richard Wirtz is a bass clarinetist. Many photographers, and two of the photographers that are quite extraordinary. One of them is Lou Stamp, who was a photojournalist, but he's also a very creative photographer, and he does most recently some things with what he calls wet photography. And Christy Vargo, and Christy is a wonderful photographer. A lot of the things that she has been able to shoot are things that you think that this is the kind of thing in Smithsonian or National Geographic or those kinds of magazines. They're stunning nature photography.
Also, when I was younger, I really thought art was only about painting. And what I discovered in taking these classes at Campbell Folk School in Airmont is that art is all kinds of things, made out of all kinds of properties and whatever. And I discovered that there's this real joy in crafting something, and that when I'm doing something that I really like doing, time just flies, and I lose actually a sense of what time it is. And I look up 3 hours later, and I'm still working on it. And I just, it touches a part of my being that just relaxes and finds joy.
It brings me tremendous joy, not only in the field, but then also seeing how those photos come alive in the computer. Yeah, it takes me away. And as I said, with the week-long photo workshops that I was doing early on, it is a place where I could just immerse myself and lose all of the background noise.
There's almost I think in some ways, almost like a spiritual quality to it. As you are weaving and you get into a rhythm, and you throw the shuttle back and forth and so forth, and your mind starts to formulate the shapes and things you can do. Some are very strict patterns. Other things you have more freedom to create things. That's very spiritually rewarding, I think.
Seeing things in a different way through the lens of a camera, catching the light, it is healing and energizing at the same time.
Whether, we have people on campus in their 90s who paint every day. And it's because every day they're discovering something different about their medium.
The feeling is there. Like, I watched Jane Heller do her paintings and her collages, and she immerses herself in that, no talking in this space, so that people can have their own headspace to do what they need to creatively.
And that's one of our rules, is that you don't talk in here.
Mm.
If somebody's paying you, don't talk. I talk to her all the time, but that...
We have to speak the same language, so
Yeah, we do.
it's
So
not that big a deal.
and we don't listen to each other, so it doesn't matter. Right?
It's still fun. I mean, I teach, as you know, now here at Otterbien. When you can have 94, 95-year-old people in your class and they're having a ball, I mean, how much fun can that be?
When I watch people who are coming to the ceramic studio, for instance, it's the first time they've tried anything like that. So I think people are finding that being able to express themselves artistically is sometimes brand new in their lives. And there are so many opportunities here to do that, like you being here with the Artist in Residence program during the summer.
Your brayer on the newsprint, and then back on it over to So just kind of rub it around, get signs. That means that was a good amount of paint, good amount of time.
Too much paint on it. I know what happens now if you put too much paint on.
All right, pull it up. That's nice. Look at that.
Yeah. Keep that.
Right.
Oh, way too much paint. It's smeared all over my design.
So I have loved the doing of it. I've loved what I like, I think, as much as I love the people involved with it. And there's just all kinds of people. I mean, they're
Just knowing these people, and they're all so gentle and kind and so interesting. You live in a different world when you live with, live in art with artists, and you live with people who are, they may be gay, they may be non-binary, they're free thinkers, they're always experimenting.
but they're all smart in the arts, and they all do their own thing, and they're self-promoting and promote you too. I couldn't have asked for more help with a career path.
I think that's why I teach now, to be around the arts with other people and to do them and look at the wonder it brings them when they make something.
Yeah, so that's what I'm working on.
It's gorgeous.
Yes, it is gorgeous.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And this is really interesting.
I would hear from.
Everyone.
The stitching is very unusual.
I think that is just, I've always wanted to know, but I think it's too much.
I think the most valuable lesson you can learn from art, one of the most valuable, is not to be judgmental. And that, I think, was the biggest lesson I learned. And down at the Cultural Arts Center, we had, this is a city center. So imagine where you're from, a city center, and anybody can come who wants to. All you have to do is pay $10 or whatever. But what I learned, we had a boy in there who had big learning disabilities. He was probably a 15-year-old. And he was from the inner city, which is where the center was. And I sort of thought, well, how's this going to go? This isn't going to go well. He was magnificent because he had no stops on him. He was wide open because he didn't know any better. And he painted like a child, and I've always wished I could paint like a child.
For me, I see it so many, everywhere. In kindergarten classrooms, you see it in jewelry. You see people and their imaginations and things that people create out of found objects, or people create out of, the craft of making a movie, and putting things together, seeing things, and being able to pull things together in such a way as it's interesting to somebody, But, what I don't like is art that I get with one glance, and then I just walk away, because they didn't pull me in. It didn't make me think. It didn't make my brain say, oh, what is that? What am I looking at, and how finely done? How could somebody have done that? And how do you do, and I think that's what it is.
My sense is that there's something within them that they recognize when they see a piece of art. There's something in that piece of art. That artist has drawn something out. I really think that.
There's this thing that's called, in the world of science, it's called the field. You can feel it when you walk into someplace or you drive by, and you drive by a place and you go, I'm never going there, because you feel it, and it is really real.
It's a vibe.
You can go to the Met or any of those museums, and their paintings you'll just walk right by, and then there'll somebody just stop like that. You can't move. The Van Gogh, first time I saw a Van Gogh show, I think it was the Met or the Modern, I don't know which. But I couldn't walk out of the room. I would start to leave, and I'd turn around and say, I just want to look at that painting for a minute. And another hour later, I'd try to leave. There's a chemistry in that piece that the artist has rendered, and it draws a response from you. That is the sign to me of a really good painting, if you just can't walk away from it.
Somebody can look at it and they have a kind of a me-know moment. And I likened it to the artist that painted on caves in our ancestry, and so that somebody else could look at that and say, me know that.
I think when we travel, I think we see more things. Sometimes you walk across European pavements and you see these wonderful pavements. Most people would never look down. It's pavement, you step on it, right? And some of those, like in Portugal, they have this absolutely gorgeous layouts with patterns. They have a template with their layout, and it's all official.
Part of the enjoyment of art is learning what are the fields that draw you. And because there are things about some pieces of art, I just look at and go, I wouldn't go. But there are other parts of art that I would spend hours there. Why is that? It's not necessarily about the technique, it's about the feel of it.
I think it's something you're born with, as a gene, something, I don't know how else to describe, but I think it's within you. And that's what you paint, and that's what draws people. It is so honest. And the good, the bad, and the ugly, the whole thing.
And if you've been through the house, so we like to have beautiful things. We like handcrafted. So when I walk through my house, I oftentimes am thinking of other people because I know them and I know who made that when I look at the glass piece. When I sit in our chairs in the kitchen, I know Tim real well, who made those 2 chairs for us. I mean, so many of the pieces in our house, it humanizes us. I guess that's what I think about art. It's what keeps us being human.
Yeah, I think people, as they grow older, may be inclined to be more appreciative of the arts because of the fact, as they're in the twilight of their years, they like to think about the memories they've had and sharing those with others. Certainly those with families, they want to know Grandpa's stories, what Grandma made, things like that. Those are wonderful relics to remember loved ones.
To use a wood spoon, you know who made it. You know, to eat off a plate that you know, or that somebody else, who it was who made that. To use utensils, to sit in a room and be able to look around and say, well, that's mine, or that's my good buddy, or that's somebody I knew, you know, who's no longer here any longer. It's humanizing to live with art.
These things mattered to me, and perhaps they have some value to you.
People here are just interested in, and many of them have beautiful things in their homes. Mm-hmm. You know, when you go to people's homes here, there's many of them so tastefully done.
Yeah. Having been in other places that are retirement communities, this is an unusual place.
Yes.
Now, whether or not that's done in creative writing, that's done in photography, that's done in weaving, that's done in sewing, quilting, music, I think that's a nice way to leave, because those things can tend to be much more permanent than what your own lifespan is. Because when this life is gone, there's no way to resurrect that. But there are memories that can be left behind that were creative. It tells the world somewhat about what I valued, who I am, the stories that were part of my life, and the things that maybe enrich your life. I think that's important.
People don't come here to die, let's be frank.
You come here so that you can live your life.
I was told by Susie shortly before she passed, she looked at me and says, "You will not be a recluse, you will not be a hermit." And I said, "I promise I won't be." So as a promise to her, I have sort of thrown myself into, and I find certain satisfaction with some of the things I can do in the arts and that, so that's fulfilling for me.
If it doesn't call your name when you start doing it, move on. Because the people that move on and who then find what it is are made much better artists than the people who force their way through.
I think they have to stick with it. If they are inclined in that direction, I think it's in their heart and their soul, and they have to do it. It's just, there's no getting around it. You have to do it. Or you're not happy and you get sick, and then that's not a good idea. So.
Just to see him smile makes my life worthwhile. To know him is to love him, and I do.
I would recommend art to anybody as a career choice, or I'm saying this to you because you'll never be sorry. You'll always find joy.
Yeah.